The Black Wall Street Massacre, a tragedy of resilience and destruction. Imagine a place where dreams flourished against all odds, a community so prosperous it was dubbed Black Wall Street. In the early 20th century, the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was a thriving oasis of black excellence, where ambition and ingenuity turned oppression into opportunity. Doctors opened clinics, entrepreneurs built bustling businesses, and families filled their homes with the promise of a brighter future. It was a place where black children could see their parents defy the odds, and where hope was not just an idea, but a tangible reality. But in America, success for black people has often been met with hostility. What took years of grit and determination to build was reduced to ashes in less than 24 hours. On a warm spring night in 1921, Greenwood, a symbol of what could be achieved in the face of systemic racism, was attacked by a white mob fueled by hatred, jealousy, and lies. The streets that once echoed with the laughter of children and the hum of thriving businesses became unrecognizable. Charred ruins haunted by the cries of those who had lost everything. Homes were burned to the ground, lives were destroyed, and an entire community was left to pick up the pieces of a tragedy that America tried to erase. The story of Black Wall Street is not just one of destruction, it is also one of resilience. It is a story that demands to be told, not as a relic of the past, but as a mirror reflecting the ongoing fight for justice and equality today. This is the story of Greenwood, its rise, its fall, and its enduring legacy. Now sit tight as we remind you what African Americans can do when they unite together with one purpose of breaking the shackles of systemic racism through intentional community-based way of living and doing business. By learning how this affects people of other race and what these other people did, the length they went in stopping African Americans from thriving. Know this day so you would know who you are, how you should operate to make sure you rise again, and this time, nothing and no one can stop the tsunami of combined black excellence. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification button. Gifts and tokens are also highly appreciated as we operate independently and would love to keep bringing the truth to you. A thriving community in the face of adversity. In the early 20th century, the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, stood as a shining example of black excellence and economic independence. Known as Black Wall Street, this prosperous community was a rare beacon of hope for African Americans during a time when systemic racism and segregation were deeply entrenched in American society. Greenwood wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a symbol of what black people could achieve when given the opportunity to thrive. The roots of Greenwood's success lay in its residents' resilience and determination. Many African Americans who settled in Tulsa were descendants of enslaved individuals seeking better opportunities after the Civil War. The promise of land ownership and economic freedom drew them to Oklahoma, where they hoped to escape the harsh realities of Jim Crow laws in the South. O.W. Gurley, a visionary entrepreneur and wealthy landowner, played a pivotal role in Greenwood's development. He purchased 40 acres of land and sold plots exclusively to black families, creating a safe haven for those seeking refuge from racial violence and economic oppression. This deliberate act of empowerment laid the foundation for a thriving community. A self-sufficient economy. Greenwood's economy was entirely self-sufficient, a remarkable feat considering the racial barriers that existed at the time. Black-owned businesses flourished, including grocery stores, clothing shops, barber shops, beauty salons, hotels, and theaters. The district was home to skilled professionals such as doctors, lawyers, teachers, and accountants who provided essential services to their neighbors. One notable figure was Dr. A.C. Jackson, a renowned surgeon who was considered one of the best in America at the time. His presence in Greenwood underscored the community's ability to attract and nurture black talent despite systemic discrimination. The district also had its own school system, churches, and social organizations that fostered a strong sense of community and pride among its residents. The wealth generated within Greenwood circulated within the community multiple times before leaving, a stark contrast to other black neighborhoods where economic resources were often drained by white-owned businesses. Cultural pride. Amid adversity. Beyond its economic success, Greenwood was a cultural hub where African Americans could celebrate their heritage without fear of judgment or persecution. Social clubs, music venues, and theaters offered spaces for artistic expression and entertainment. This vibrant cultural scene helped solidify Greenwood's reputation as a thriving epicenter of black life. However, this success did not go unnoticed by white residents in Tulsa. Jealousy and resentment festered as they watched Greenwood prosper while many white communities struggled economically. This tension would eventually boil over into one of the darkest chapters in American history. May 30th, 1921. A spark that ignited a firestorm. The events leading up to the Tulsa Race Massacre began with an incident that has been shrouded in ambiguity for over a century. On May 30th, 1921, Dick Rowland, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner, entered an elevator operated by Sarah Page, a 17-year-old white girl. What transpired between them remains unclear to this day. Some accounts suggest that Rowland accidentally stepped on Page's foot or grabbed her arm after tripping. Others claim that Page screamed out of fear or surprise at his presence. Regardless of what actually happened, rumors quickly spread throughout Tulsa that Rowland had assaulted Page, a grave accusation that carried deadly consequences for black men during that era. The next day, Rowland was arrested and taken to jail. News of his arrest spread rapidly through Tulsa's white community, fueling outrage and calls for vigilante justice. A mob began forming outside the courthouse with demands for Rowland's lynching, a common occurrence in early 20th century America when accusations against black men often led to extrajudicial killings. A community rises to defend. Its own word of the potential lynching reached Greenwood's residents, many of whom were determined not to let another black man fall victim to racial violence without resistance. Approximately 75 armed black men, many of them World War I veterans, marched to the courthouse to protect Rowland from harm. Their presence infuriated members of the white mob gathered outside. Tensions escalated as verbal confrontations turned into physical altercations. When a white man attempted to disarm one of the black veterans, a shot was fired, triggering chaos that would soon engulf all of Greenwood. June 1st, 1921, 18 hours of terror and destruction. What followed was nothing short of an orchestrated attack on Greenwood and its residents. Over an 18-hour period from May 31st to June 1st, thousands of armed white men descended upon the district with one goal: complete destruction. A coordinated assault. The violence began with looting and arson as white mobs set fire to homes and businesses throughout Greenwood. Families were forced to flee for their lives as flames consumed everything they had worked so hard to build. Eyewitnesses described scenes of utter chaos, men firing guns indiscriminately into crowds while women and children ran for cover. Perhaps most horrifying was the use of airplanes during the attack, a rare instance of aerial warfare against civilians on American soil. Witnesses reported seeing planes dropping incendiary bombs onto buildings below while firing rifles at fleeing residents from above. By dawn on June 1st, much of Greenwood lay in ruins. Entire city blocks had been reduced to ashes, homes were destroyed, businesses were obliterated, lives were lost. The human toll. The exact number of casualties remains unknown due to decades-long efforts to suppress information about the massacre. Estimates range from dozens to hundreds killed, most buried in unmarked mass graves without proper acknowledgement or mourning. Among those killed was Dr. A.C. Jackson, the esteemed surgeon who had surrendered peacefully but was shot dead on his front porch by an armed mob member. In addition to loss of life came immense material devastation. Over 1,400 homes burned down, nearly every business destroyed, thousands left homeless overnight. The cover-up, erasing history. In the aftermath of the massacre came an equally insidious act, the deliberate erasure of what had occurred in Greenwood from public memory. Local officials blamed black residents for inciting violence, despite overwhelming evidence pointing toward white aggression as its cause. Insurance companies refused claims filed by survivors under clauses excluding damages caused by riots. For decades afterward, schools omitted any mention about what happened during those fateful days, leaving generations unaware about this dark chapter tucked away within America's past. The cover-up, erasing history, continued. The immediate aftermath of the Tulsa Race Massacre saw a concerted effort to erase the events from public consciousness. This cover-up was multifaceted, involving both official actions and societal silence. Official suppression. Local authorities actively suppressed information about the massacre. The official narrative shifted blame onto the black community, portraying them as instigators of violence rather than victims. Law enforcement officials often turned a blind eye to the white mob's actions and even participated in the destruction by deputizing white residents and providing them with weapons. Insurance companies refused to pay claims filed by black residents, citing policy clauses that excluded coverage for damages caused by riots or insurrections. This denial of financial assistance further crippled the community's ability to rebuild. Newspapers and other media outlets initially reported on the massacre, but quickly downplayed its severity or omitted crucial details about the white mob's role in the violence. The narrative was carefully crafted to minimize the extent of the destruction and shift responsibility away from white perpetrators. Societal silence. Beyond official actions, a broader societal silence enveloped the massacre. For decades, the events in Greenwood were rarely discussed in schools, history books, or public forums. White residents often avoided the topic altogether, while black residents who survived the massacre were reluctant to share their experiences due to fear of retaliation or further discrimination. This silence allowed myths and misinformation to proliferate, further obscuring the truth about what had happened in Greenwood. The erasure of history served to perpetuate racial inequality by denying victims acknowledgement of their suffering and preventing society from learning from its past mistakes. The long road to justice and recognition. Despite the efforts to bury the truth, the story of Black Wall Street and the Tulsa Race Massacre refused to be forgotten entirely. Survivors and their descendants kept the memory alive, passing down stories of resilience and injustice through generations. Early efforts to uncover the truth. In the decades following the massacre, a few historians and activists began to investigate the events and piece together the fragmented accounts of what had occurred. These early efforts faced significant obstacles, including limited access to records and widespread resistance from those who sought to maintain the cover-up. Despite these challenges, they managed to uncover crucial evidence that challenged the official narrative and shed light on the extent of the violence and destruction. Their work laid the foundation for future investigations and demands for justice. The Tulsa Race Riot Commission. In 1996, the Oklahoma legislature established the Tulsa Race Riot Commission to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the events surrounding the massacre. The commission spent several years gathering evidence, interviewing survivors, and reviewing historical documents. Their findings confirmed that white mobs had deliberately attacked Greenwood, destroying homes and businesses and killing hundreds of black residents. The commission also concluded that local and state officials had failed to protect the community and had actively suppressed information about the massacre in its aftermath. The commission's report, published in 2001, provided a detailed account of the events and made several recommendations, including financial reparations for survivors and their descendants. While the state of Oklahoma has taken some steps to acknowledge the massacre and commemorate its victims, the issue of reparations remains a contentious one. The fight for reparations. The demand for reparations has become a central focus of the ongoing struggle for justice for the victims of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Reparations advocates argue that financial compensation is necessary to address the lasting economic and social disparities caused by the destruction of Black Wall Street. Arguments for reparations. Proponents of reparations contend that the massacre not only destroyed individual wealth, but also robbed an entire community of its economic potential. The loss of homes, businesses, and cultural institutions had a devastating impact on Greenwood's residents and their descendants, perpetuating cycles of poverty and inequality. They argue that the denial of insurance claims and the lack of government assistance in the aftermath of the massacre further compounded the economic hardship faced by survivors. Reparations, they say, are a way to begin to repair the damage and provide Black families with the resources they need to build a more secure future. Opposition to reparations. Opponents of reparations often argue that it is unfair to hold current generations responsible for the actions of their ancestors. They also raise concerns about the logistical challenges of determining who is eligible for compensation and how to distribute the funds. Some argue that other forms of redress, such as scholarships, job training programs, and investments in Black communities, are more effective ways to address the legacy of racial discrimination. Current status of reparations efforts. Despite the opposition, the movement for reparations has gained momentum in recent years. Several lawsuits have been filed seeking compensation for survivors and their descendants. While these legal efforts have faced setbacks, they have helped to raise awareness of the issue and put pressure on government officials to take action. In addition, some cities and states have begun to explore the possibility of providing reparations through various initiatives, such as direct payments, housing assistance, and investments in Black-owned businesses. Survivor testimonies. Bearing witness to history. One of the most powerful ways to understand the impact of the Tulsa Race Massacre is through the voices of those who lived through it. Survivor testimonies provide first-hand accounts of the violence, destruction, and resilience that defined that tragic chapter in American history. Sharing personal experiences. Survivors have shared their stories through interviews, documentaries, and public appearances, offering a glimpse into the horrors they endured and the lasting trauma they experienced. Their accounts paint a vivid picture of the chaos and terror that gripped Greenwood during those fateful days. They describe the fear of being hunted by armed mobs, the anguish of watching their homes and businesses burn to the ground, and the heartbreak of losing loved ones. Their testimonies also reveal the strength and determination of Black residents who refused to be defeated by hate and injustice. Preserving memory. Survivor testimonies play a crucial role in preserving the memory of the Tulsa Race Massacre and ensuring that future generations understand its significance. By sharing their experiences, survivors help to counter the efforts to erase history and remind us of the importance of fighting against racial discrimination and inequality. Advocating for justice. Many survivors have become active advocates for justice, demanding reparations and calling for greater awareness of the massacre. Their voices carry immense weight in the ongoing struggle to hold those responsible accountable and to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. National implications. A reflection of systemic racism. The Tulsa Race Massacre was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader pattern of racial violence and systemic oppression that has plagued the United States since its founding. The events in Greenwood serve as a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained racism can manifest in violent and destructive ways. A pattern of racial violence. Throughout American history, there have been numerous instances of racial violence against black communities, often fueled by jealousy, economic competition, and unfounded accusations. The massacre in Tulsa occurred during a period marked by widespread racial tension across the country, particularly in the wake of World War I. Many returning black soldiers found themselves facing hostility from white communities that resented their newfound assertiveness and demands for civil rights. Similar massacres occurred in cities like Rosewood, Florida, in 1923, and Wilmington, North Carolina, in 1898. These events share common themes: white mobs targeting prosperous black communities out of fear and resentment, leading to destruction and loss of life. The systematic nature of these attacks reflects a broader societal effort to maintain white supremacy and suppress black economic advancement. The role of law enforcement. The response of law enforcement during the Tulsa Race Massacre highlights the complicity of authorities in perpetuating racial violence. Rather than protecting the black community from harm, police officers often sided with white mobs or stood idly by as atrocities unfolded. This betrayal of duty underscores a troubling pattern where law enforcement has historically failed to safeguard marginalized communities. The legacy of such complicity continues to resonate today as communities grapple with issues of police violence and systemic racism. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought renewed attention to these injustices, calling for accountability and reform within law enforcement agencies nationwide. Comparisons with other racial massacres. The Tulsa Race Massacre is often compared to other instances of racial violence in American history, highlighting the recurring theme of white supremacy targeting black prosperity. Understanding these comparisons provides context for the ongoing struggle for racial justice. The Rosewood Massacre. In January 1923, just 2 years after the Tulsa Massacre, another horrific event unfolded in Rosewood, Florida. A white mob attacked the predominantly black town after a false accusation against a black man led to fears of retaliation. The violence resulted in several deaths and the destruction of homes and businesses. Like Greenwood, Rosewood was never able to fully recover from the devastation. Wilmington Coup of 1898. Another significant event is the Wilmington Coup of 1898, where white supremacists overthrew a legitimately elected biracial government in Wilmington, North Carolina. This violent coup resulted in the deaths of dozens of black residents and marked a turning point in Southern politics as white supremacists regained control through intimidation and violence. These events illustrate a troubling pattern throughout American history. When black communities achieve economic success or political power, they often face violent backlash from white populations determined to maintain their dominance. The psychological toll. Trauma across generations. The impact of the Tulsa Race Massacre extends beyond physical destruction. It has left deep psychological scars on survivors and their descendants. The trauma experienced during such violent events can reverberate through generations. Intergenerational trauma. Research shows that trauma can be passed down through generations, affecting not only those who directly experienced violence, but also their children and grandchildren. Survivors of the massacre carried with them not only memories of loss, but also a pervasive sense of fear and mistrust that influenced their relationships and community dynamics. Many descendants have reported feelings of anxiety or depression related to their family history. The knowledge that their ancestors endured such brutality can create a sense of collective grief that is difficult to process. In recent years, there have been efforts within the Greenwood community to address this intergenerational trauma through healing initiatives. Community organizations have hosted workshops focused on mental health awareness and resilience building among descendants of massacre survivors. These initiatives aim to foster dialogue about trauma while promoting healing through storytelling and shared experiences. Additionally, educational programs aimed at teaching younger generations about their history help instill pride in their heritage while addressing the pain associated with past injustices. The legacy of the Tulsa Race Massacre continues to resonate today as activists work tirelessly to address systemic racism and advocate for social justice. The fight for reparations is just one aspect of a broader movement seeking equality for all marginalized communities. In recent years, movements like Black Lives Matter have brought renewed attention to issues of police brutality, systemic racism, and economic inequality faced by Black Americans. Activists draw parallels between historical events like the Tulsa Race Massacre and contemporary struggles for justice, highlighting how deeply rooted these issues are within American society. Protests following high-profile incidents involving police violence against Black individuals have sparked nationwide discussions about race relations and accountability. Activists emphasize that acknowledging historical injustices is essential for creating meaningful change today. Efforts to educate both young people and adults about America's racial history are crucial components of ongoing activism. Schools across the country are beginning to incorporate lessons on events like the Tulsa Race Massacre into their curricula, ensuring that future generations understand this critical part of American history. Organizations dedicated to preserving the memory of Greenwood are also working diligently to create educational resources that highlight not only the tragedy, but also the resilience exhibited by its residents. By fostering awareness through education, advocates hope to inspire future generations to continue fighting against injustice, remembering history as a catalyst for change. The massacre at Black Wall Street is not merely an event from America's past. It serves as a powerful reminder that systemic racism remains deeply entrenched within society today. To remember this tragedy is to confront uncomfortable truths about our collective history and recognize how those truths continue shaping our present reality. As we reflect on what happened in Greenwood over a century ago, we must commit ourselves to honoring its legacy through action, supporting reparations efforts, advocating for economic justice, amplifying marginalized voices, challenging systemic inequalities, fostering community healing, educating ourselves about racial history, ensuring future generations learn from past mistakes. While destruction may erase buildings or businesses, true resilience lies within people, determined never again allow hatred, silence them, or diminish their dreams. The spirit embodied by those who built Black Wall Street lives on today, wherever Black excellence continues thriving amidst adversity, reminding us all that hope endures even when faced with unimaginable challenges. Having seen all of this, I hope it is now easier for Black people to understand why some other races feel uneasy about their success. I also hope Black people recognize why they have been conditioned not to value themselves, while others continue to admire and emulate them. Imagine what the destiny of Black people could have been if the Tulsa Black Wall Street Massacre had never happened. What if those thriving Black communities had been allowed to grow, expand, and dominate from a position of strength? What if they had continued to build their own schools, hospitals, churches, mosques, parks, markets, industries, banks, financial systems, malls, sports centers, media outlets, and more? And here's a critical question. Was the Tulsa Massacre truly the result of a random racially motivated riot, supposedly triggered by a young Black boy accused of assaulting a white elevator operator? Or was it a long-planned offensive, strategically designed to sabotage the inevitable rise and dominance of a blessed race? Was it merely retaliation, or was it part of a broader effort to suppress Black economic power, ensuring that a self-sufficient and thriving Black society would never be allowed to flourish? Have you ever wondered why there are Chinatowns, Italian neighborhoods, and other ethnic enclaves? Yet black communities have been systematically denied the opportunity to unite and prosper in the same way? Because they recognize the genius in melanin. They understand the resilience, the determination, the skill, the grace, the strength, and the laser-sharp focus of the black mind. And that terrifies them. You have been divided along the lines of ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, gang affiliations, social class, and religion, because a divided people cannot rise together. They made you believe you were incapable of learning, that you were unintelligent. But have you ever questioned why black communities have historically been denied access to quality education? They painted you as savages. Yet black slaves were entrusted to clean their homes, care for their children, and even nurse their infants. They told you that you couldn't govern yourselves, yet they have systematically placed obstacles in the path of black leadership. Instead, they allow you positions of influence, but use those roles to manipulate black figures, coercing them into promoting lifestyles that negatively impact young, impressionable black minds. Through music, film, and media, they glorify illicit drugs, gang violence, hypersexuality, and material excess, distracting and dismantling the very foundations of black progress. But now I hope you see the truth. Black people do not need rich and famous entertainers to thrive. Their success does not depend on celebrities who have been bought and used to perpetuate a false narrative. True growth and power lie in the collective strength of black communities, pulling resources together, living, building, and thriving in unity, and conquering the world from their own foundations. Thank you for watching. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and stay tuned as we continue to reveal the truths that educate, empower, and free us all from indoctrination.